Welcome back to Through the Veil podcast with Elle and Camille. I'm Camille.
I'm Elle.
And this is the podcast where we seek to demystify, develop, and celebrate our spiritual gifts through a faith-based context. And today we are very excited to have Dr. Bradley Nelson with us. Just for a quick intro, he discovered and started developing an incredible breakthrough method around 1995 to help people release emotional, physical, and even multi-generational baggage to help them live a happier life. His methods are known as the body code, the emotion code, and the belief code. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Bradley Nelson.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited about your show.
Yeah.
We are terribly excited. We've been looking forward to this for quite a moment. We'd love to kind of poke into your background a little bit to begin, kind of with where this all started and where it came from with you. There's a lot of modalities in energy work and in energy healing, and I think that you are one of those standout people with a really interesting story that happens to be very Christian and very faith-based, and we would love to hear about it from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my story really began when I was 7 years old. I was born in Great Falls, Montana, and my my mother was really into alternative healing, and she was kind of a health nut back in the days when people actually thought if you took vitamins, you were a nut, right? You were actually kind of off of your nut. My dad was in real estate and construction, and when I was 7 years old, I got the measles, and I was really sick. And my folks had been to bed for me on the couch upstairs, so I could be near their bedroom. And I remember this one particular night, something really dramatic happened. I was lying there on the couch, just feeling really sick and nauseated and feverish and just feeling really ill. And my parents came into the room. Everybody else had gone to bed. My folks come into the room, and my mother says to my father, she says, "Honey, will you kneel down with me and say a prayer for our boy so he'll be able to get well?" And so they did. Now, knowing my dad, this probably was the first time I'd ever heard my dad pray out loud. He just was, not so much that way, but he starts offering this prayer. And in the middle of this prayer, this change begins at the top of my head, and it goes whoosh through my body to the soles of my feet. And I was instantly, completely healed. Now, I held my tongue till my dad was done praying, which didn't take long. And when he was done, I said, I'm better. And they said, that's fine. Go back to sleep. I knew that the next day I'd overheard them talking. I knew that the plan was the next day they were going to put me into an oxygen tent in the hospital. And but the next day proved it, that I was totally better. So I learned two things from that. I learned that, there's a higher power that we can draw upon, an unseen power, God, source energy. People refer to that as different things. And I also learned that healing doesn't have to take a long time. It can happen instantly, because it did happen to me. And I mean, I remember that event like it happened yesterday, even though, it was 30 years ago now. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, to go from being really sick one moment to being totally healthy in the next instant is just so bizarre and so crazy. You can't ever forget that. So fast forward about another 7 years, when I was 13 years old, I ended up being diagnosed with kidney disease. And I would get these terrible pains that would come out of the blue and just knock me to the ground or take my breath away. And it was kind of terrifying, honestly. So my folks were really worried about me. They took me to the hospital. They ran all these tests, and they said that I had kidney disease. And I found out, my mom told me years later that they'd been told that I had about a 50-50 chance of surviving this, really. But medically, they said there's nothing that we can really do. We don't really have any treatments for this. And back then, they didn't do kidney transplants. So my kidneys were fighting for their survival. If they died, that was the end of me. I was gone. And so my mother, especially being so open to alternatives, had heard about a couple of holistic doctors that worked out on the edge of town. And so my folks took me to see them. They were a couple of old time osteopathic doctors, and they started working on me. And it was really interesting to me, because I could feel immediately that what they were doing was just what my body needed. And right away, the pain started becoming less and less severe and less frequent. And within about 3 weeks, my folks took me back to the hospital and they ran the tests again. And, and as I recall, they said, well, it's a spontaneous remission. Whatever we did must have helped, but I knew they hadn't done anything to help me really. It was these other people that worked in a trailer house in a muddy wheat field out on the edge of town in Great Falls, Montana. They were the ones that had actually helped me. And so that was a really interesting introduction to me into healing and the differences between, organized Western medicine where all the money is, and then this other kind of healing that happens out on the periphery that seems to really be valuable, but that not a lot of people know about and that is not widely recognized. So I decided that's what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be a healer like them. And I can remember laying on my back on their treatment table, looking up at them saying, when I grow up, I want to do what you're doing. And they were very discouraging, actually. They said, no, they said, if you go to chiropractic school or a naturopathic school or something, they said, they'll fill your head so full of fixed ideas that when you come out of there, you'll be like a zombie. You won't even be able to think for yourself. So that, I really took that to heart, right? So I had this dream of being a healer, and years went by, and I ended up going to BYU, Hawaii, in 1980, and
Nice.
I was going through my schedule. I needed one more class for this. I think it was summer term, and I needed one more class for my schedule. And the only class that really fit my schedule well was a class on basic computer programming. I didn't know anything about computers at all. I wasn't really even interested, but I thought, well, this fits. It might be kind of interesting. I'll check it out. So I took this class. And I mean, it was the things we were doing were so simple and so basic. I mean, learning that basic language, it's called that for a reason. But to me, it was just absolutely enchanting. And I was totally in love with computers. So this is 1980. Well, so in 1983, the IBM PC came out, and I taught myself. I never went to another class. I taught myself everything, and I became a programmer. And back in those early days, what I used to do is I'd go into people's businesses. They'd have a new IBM PC, and they wouldn't know what to do with it because there was no software back then. And so I would write the software to help them run their business, and it was all just really simple stuff, but it made their computer useful. And I really had a great time meeting people and learning about businesses, and it was really cool. So that was my thing. I was going to be a computer programmer now, and I loved it, and it was really fun. I had a business called the Computer Tutor, which I thought was really clever, and had a lot of fun doing that. And so I was going to BYU, and I was taking information management and political science, and I was gonna get my MBA, and I was about 6 months from going into the MBA program. And my wife and I went home to Montana, and we're sitting around with my parents, and it's Christmas time, and we're just chatting, and my dad all of a sudden, totally out of the blue, says to me, "Are you sure that you don't want to go to chiropractic school? Because it seems like a great career, and you've always wanted to do that." And I said, "No, I'm going this other direction." And he said, "Well, why don't you think about it one more time?" So I thought, well, okay. And so Jean and I, my wife Jean, we made up a pro and cons, right? These two careers, these two potential futures. Going to work for some big company like IBM or have your own chiropractic office. These two careers, and both of these were really compelling, right? So I didn't know what to do, but having learned that there's a higher power that we can draw upon, and having had the most powerful spiritual experience of my life actually happened to me when I was 15 years old. And I actually had run away from home. And it's it'd be a whole nother episode, but I ran away from home and had a lot of trouble and was just hanging around with the wrong crowd, the whole thing. And I ended up living with a family in Arizona and going to a little kind of a private school that was very interesting. And I ended up having a very powerful spiritual experience there where I learned a number of things. And the most important thing that I learned was that God is real, that He lives. He's our Father, and He loves us. And learned also that Jesus Christ is the Savior of the world, and so on. Back to where I was trying to figure out these two potential futures, I thought, well, all right, I don't know what to do, because I could go either way and probably have a great life and be really happy. So told Gene about it. We prayed about it that night on our knees and asked for help. So that night I had this experience where 3 different times I was awakened. And each time that I was awakened, my mind would be full of all these happy thoughts about how wonderful it is to be able to heal people and help people and serve people, naturally, and so on. And I would counter with some thought like, well, yeah, but the new IBM PC is a 4 megahertz processor. Stupid thing like that. So that's how it went this first night, right? I'd wake up with these feelings 3 times, and I would always counter with something else. So the next day, I still don't know what to do. So pray again the next night. On the second night, I had the same times, but this night was different because each time the experience when I would wake up would be exponentially more powerful than the last time, to the point that the third time that I was awake, second night, I mean, it was absolutely overwhelming. I mean, these feelings of, thoughts of service to mankind and humanity and the whole world. And right then, as I'm feeling that, a voice speaks to me and it says, sacred calling. And I thought, okay, I get it. And so I'm in. So, and I didn't really know what that meant, but I thought it was just about chiropractic. So I went to chiropractic school, had a great experience. It's one of the things that I remember the most was one day when our neurology instructor was talking about the brain and how the brain is a computer. And he was kind of riffing about this. And I'm sitting there, a computer programmer, thinking, wow, the brain's a computer. And I just started daydreaming about how, gee, the brain must know what's really wrong with people. It must have a lot of things to say. I wonder if we'll ever be able to access that internal computer because, gee, if we could, it might be really helpful, as doctors. And little did I know, I thought, well, maybe 200 or 300 years from now, we'll have that. And little did I know that's exactly what I was going to be spending my whole entire career on is figuring out, breaking the code, right, on how to communicate with the subconscious mind, really, which is the part of us that's keeping air moving in and out of our lungs and keeping, building 3 million new red blood cells every minute and doing all kinds of, countless, probably trillions of chemical reactions every minute. Anyway, so that was awesome. I got out of school and got into my own practice. And the very first patient that I saw in my practice was this guy that weighed about 300 pounds who was actually crying because he was in so much pain with his low back. And I remember feeling totally green and feeling like I wasn't totally sure what to do. And so I really wanted to help this guy, but I remember thinking, how do I know what this guy really needs? How do I know what's really going on with him? So I said a prayer and asked for help. And that was the first prayer of countless prayers because this became a habit. Anytime a patient would come in to see me, before I would go to work on them, I would just silently ask for help and from up above. And, most of the time when we ask for help from up above, I think the answers, they probably always come. They don't always come right then. Sometimes they do. A lot of the time we probably miss those answers because they come in as kind of a subtle feeling, maybe an intuition, maybe an impression. We might have a little idea, and we usually don't even realize those are coming from somewhere else. We think they're, we're so smart, they're coming from our own mind. But there were times when, in asking for help, there were times when information would just suddenly flood in. It would be like this hatch would open up above and just boom, all this information would just pour into me. And that didn't happen very often, but it happened enough that I have an absolute knowledge that God is totally aware of us all the time and knows exactly what we need. And when we ask for help, it's available and we can get it. And so it was really an interesting experience. And so I practiced for about, I think about 18 years. in one form or another. And as I was working with my patients, I always had a computer there, right? Because I was, still really a nerd. And as I would find new things or learn new things, I would put them into this system, this knowledge base, a mind mapping system that I had created, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. But the interesting thing about it was, rather than things becoming more complicated, they actually became easier. And I'll share something with you that kind of helps to give you a little insight. Many years ago, when I was in practice, I used to use one of the methods that I used was called activator methods. And it was a little, kind of like a
Yeah.
little, looked like a little metal hypodermic thing. And it had a little rubber tip on the end. You'd squeeze it and it would fire, and you'd give a little adjustment to a bone. A lot of people like that because it was, no cracking and popping. Some people don't like that. So in this method, I had a table that would stand up vertically, and a patient would stand up against the table, put their nose in the slot in the middle, grab the handles on the side. I'd press a button, and the table would lay down, horizontal, and this foot plate would drop away. So I could look at their leg length and get a very accurate picture of their leg length. And in this method, I learned that you could test to see if bones were out of alignment by just pushing on them in certain directions. So if a bone is out of alignment and it's misaligned in this direction, if I push it further over, the leg length is going to change because the body's going to react to that. On the other hand, if a bone's out of alignment and I push it back towards correction, the leg length would balance. So it was a really cool method, and I did it for a number of years and found that it worked great. So I would line people up, and by the time I was done, everything would be lined up and their legs would be balanced, and that would be the end of their treatment, right? So here's what happened one day. I'm working on this guy. I get him all balanced. His treatment is over. His leg lengths, both sides, perfectly balanced in his legs. And for some reason, I started thinking about this guy's left kidney. And I went back and just checked his leg length one more time, and it was all of a sudden way off. And I thought, wait a minute, what? I just got this guy balanced. Then I thought about his right kidney, checked his leg length, and it was balanced. And I thought, what is going on? And I thought about his left kidney, boom, out of balance again. Thought about his right kidney, balanced. Well, he had something going on, probably some emotional baggage or something affecting his right kidney. I can't remember, but there was something going on there. But this was like a revelation to me because suddenly I realized that the thoughts that I was having consciously were being detected by his subconscious mind, which I thought was really interesting. So
Like maybe
anyway,
our computers are all connected.
yeah. Well, the computer programming that I had done, see, I had to do that because it prepped me to be able to understand how to communicate with the body. Because you see, the body itself, the subconscious mind, is this. It's the spirit, I believe, that we have had, forever. But when we come into this world, is within us still, but we don't generally have access to it. Our ability to access our total intelligence is dialed way, 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 way back. So we can only, we have access to our conscious mind, but the subconscious mind is doing all these unbelievable things, right? And keeping us alive, from one to the next. So I developed this methodology of my own where people would come in, I would look at their leg length, and then I would just think things. I'd think, okay, show me a yes answer, and the legs would balance. Show me a no, the legs would imbalance, right? So I learned I could communicate, and I didn't have to say anything out loud. I could, or it didn't matter. I could communicate with the body silently. And I didn't really know how it worked, but I used it, and it was really, really interesting. And then here's a funny story for you. One day, this guy comes in. I've been doing this for probably 5 or 6 years, just talking to the body and asking questions and getting answers through the leg length. So one day this guy comes in, and just a routine visit, kind of a follow-up thing. He lays down on the table, and my first thing is, okay, I ask just silently, I'm looking at his leg length, and I'm asking, okay, show me a yes, show me a no. And I got absolutely no response from his legs. And I thought, wait, that's the first time I'd ever seen that. So I did it again. I just had these thoughts. Okay, show me yes, show me no. I got no change at all. And I looked up, And this guy he has a white t-shirt on, and on the back of his t-shirt was this decal about this big of the Stephen King clown from the movie
Oh,
It, right?
Weird.
This really evil looking clown with fangs, dripping
yeah.
blood. It was just really scary. And I thought, I wonder. I took a piece of paper and I covered this up. I haven't said anything to him at all, right? I covered up this decal on his back and I go back to his leg length. And then I think, okay, show me yes, show me no. I got perfect changes. And I thought,
Wow.
no way. So I uncovered the decal again and couldn't get anything. I covered it up again and all of a sudden perfect answers, right? So I just thought, wow, that's amazing. So I told the guy after playing with this for a couple of minutes, I told him, about how he probably should get rid of that shirt. I never saw the guy again. He never came
Ah,
back.
Love your scientific mind in that moment was like, let's repeat the process and see if we can get it again and again.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
as time went on, as I'm asking questions, right, I'm getting, I'm learning more and more and getting more information, and I'm studying everything that I can because I'm desperate to fix my patients, and I'm obsessed with getting to the underlying causes of what's really causing their symptoms, right? And so I'm asking for help all the time. So I'm kind of in a state of prayer all day long. And I'm studying everything that I can study, ancient stuff, modern stuff, whatever it was. And the interesting thing is, as time went on, things got simpler. And so one of
Hmm.
the things that I learned, of course, is about emotional baggage. And that's what the Emotion Code book is all about, right? And how the emotions that we experience, sometimes we bury, sometimes we enhance to where they're really intense more than they need to be. Sometimes we have emotional experiences that happen that are just overwhelming. And those kinds of circumstances can result in emotional baggage or trapped emotional energies that were never really fully expressed and never processed. And so I found that that was the single biggest underlying cause of all the symptoms that my patients were having. It didn't matter how old they were, it didn't matter how young they were. I learned about how we can inherit emotional energy at conception from mom or dad, and those can go back for generations, actually. And so it was really fascinating. I had this perfect laboratory, right? Because it was just me working on patients, and I'm seeing new people all the time, right? And every new person is like, you know, uh, is kind
Like
of
a case study, their own
exciting,
case study.
interest. Yeah. And the last 10 years of my practice, most of the people that I saw had been told there was no help for them at all in Western medicine. And so they'd come to see me as a last resort. But but I knew how to talk to this internal computer. But if I hadn't been a computer programmer, if I hadn't been the computer tutor back in the 80s, I never would have been able to figure any of this out, I don't think. This paradigm really that there is a vastly intelligent computer within us. And I believe the subconscious mind is so intelligent that it's beyond our ability to even comprehend. I think that the conscious mind is an infinitesimally tiny fraction of our total intelligence. And
Hmm.
when people die and they go to the other side, and they have a life review and so on, oftentimes they talk about how their mind expands to this amazing degree. And I believe that's, I think that we are literally children of God, right? He's our father. And so, you know, we have so much intelligence that's built into us, that's inside of us. But when we come into this world, not only are our memories from our life before blocked to us, but also our ability to access with our conscious mind all that intelligence that is within us is severely limited, right? And there are reasons for that. I mean, I think that our ability to access our total intelligence is dialed back so far. It's amazing to me that we even can function. I mean,
Right.
we're all really so stupid, really.
we're so minimized. Yeah.
We're so
We had
minimized.
a we had a really great conversation with a quantum physicist about this last year, and it was amazing some of the things that you're hitting on about the conscious mind and the nature of the consciousness that we all have and the interconnectedity with all of that. Um, and he was really hitting on the quantum fields of like the information field of the things that our subconscious mind is actually connected with that, and that is this
Yeah.
interhuman connection that all of us have, and this connection
Yeah.
to divine, this connection to God, and this is where this interacts. So it's like the subconscious is the gateway through which that functions, and also through which we can receive that intuition and that spiritual prompting, we can call it, from the Holy Spirit as well. So it's fascinating that this is also where you connected and found these answers, even with the body, and something that we as embodied people we're very invested in. We deal with every single day, right?
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting that your story is just such a story of like God preparing you and kind of setting you up to have such an interest in healing because you had, sicknesses when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Um, and then you happen to just chance upon this class at this college. I think sometimes so many of the most important steps in our life are like, well, I had this random class I just took. Like,
Not
God isn't
random.
going to send us these like light bulb moments like this is the one and you got to go take this class. It just sort of leads you there and we're not really sure what's going on, but we
Yeah.
just go and then it's like, oh, this is like so important. um I was listening to you interviewed on a different podcast and you shared an experience about your wife. You had like a visionary experience where another like, time when
Mm.
God stepped in and
Yeah.
he helped you understand the walls around her heart. Do you mind just going there for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me start off by talking a little bit about the heart and how ancients believed that the heart was the seat of the soul, the source of love and creativity and romance, and they believed it was the core of our being. And that was in ancient times. In the Bible, the word heart is mentioned around 1,000 times. And, in Western medicine and Western biology, what you'll learn is that the heart is really a pump, and that's pretty much it. Back in it was really only in the 70s they discovered that the heart had a lot of gray matter and white matter in it. And then
Hmm.
they did some studies and found that the communications between the brain and the heart are primarily going from the heart to the brain, which was kind of weird because then they realized, well, gee, maybe the heart, there is a brain in the heart, the little brain in the heart, and maybe it's sending messages to the brain. Maybe the brain's obeying the messages sent by the heart, and that's exactly really what goes on. So the heart contains memories of things that we love and believe, and our favorite things are stored in the heart. And so when people have heart transplants, oftentimes they will inherit the loves and affinities of the donor, and there are lots of stories. There are books written about this. Um, and anyway, so I always suspected when I had a patient and I would work on them and release their emotional baggage, there were times when I would come away from that just feeling like there was something missing. I was missing something. There was something else going on with them. Sometimes they would have had some kind of emotional experience that I figured they had to have emotional baggage about, but I couldn't find it. And I just would think, there's something else I'm missing. I don't know what it is. So in 1998, my wife and I went to Portland, Oregon, and I was a scheduled speaker at this conference on magnetic healing. And she wakes me up early on the morning of this conference, and she never wakes me up early. Okay, never. But she wakes me up early on this conference, and she said that she'd had a dream, and she asked me if I would help to decipher this dream. And so I said that I would. And so as I'm trying to help her figure out what this dream means, I all of a sudden have what I can only describe as a waking vision, where suddenly the room that I'm in is not there anymore. And instead, I'm looking at this unbelievably beautiful hardwood floor. And I have this understanding that comes into my mind that my wife's heart is underneath this floor. And I have no idea what this means. But I mean, I'm seeing this, and this was very high definition, very clear. I didn't imagine this. This was an experience, it was a vision. And it lasted for several minutes, right?
Hmm.
And I told my wife what I was seeing and understanding, and she had no idea about it either, didn't know what it meant. So we prayed, asked God to help us figure this out. And so then I started doing, I figured, okay, this is something coming out of her subconscious mind. So I started doing muscle testing on her to try to get the answers. I'm asking questions and getting yeses and nos from her subconscious. And pretty quickly, what we figured out was that there was a like an energy field, a wall around her heart, and we figured out that that wall was made of emotional energies and emotional baggage, trapped emotions from different experiences that she'd gone through in her life. And we found out that she had started to put up this wall that we call the heart wall when she was 2 years old. She was born into a very volatile kind of a family. Her dad was a rageaholic. He was a great guy, but a rageaholic. And so all the kids were always walking on eggshells. Nobody ever knew when he was going to blow up or at who. And so around 2 years old, she starts developing trapped emotions, and her subconscious puts them around her heart to try to protect her heart from being totally broken, right? Now, the price that she paid for having this wall around her heart was it was easy for her to feel depressed or feel anxiety. Um, it was difficult for her to feel like she really belonged in any group that she was ever in. She always felt like she was kind of an outsider, even with girls and women that she'd known her whole life. And and so we asked if we could start to release these emotions, and we got a yes answer. And so we found that we could release one, and then sometimes it would take a little time to process. Sometimes we could release two. And it took about 2 weeks totally. And when the last one was finally released, all of a sudden, she felt for the first time that she belonged, right? It's an amazing thing. Well, my favorite Heartwall story actually happened shortly thereafter. A woman comes into my office and she tells me that she's 38 years old. She's a nurse. And she comes in because she's got this really severe neck pain. It's about a 9 on a 0 to 10 scale. And so I'm talking with her, and she tells me that she has not dated. She's single. She hasn't dated in 8 years, and she's never going to date again. And I said, well, why? And she said that 8 years before, she was really deeply in love with this guy that dumped her and broke her heart, right? And so I tested her and found, hey, she had one of these things too, this heart wall, right? And so I released, there were 3 emotions making it up, and they all had happened from this thing 8 years before, this breakup. And when the last emotion was released, the heart wall suddenly was gone. Guess what else left? Her neck pain suddenly went from a 9 to a 0 instantaneously, right? So she was so excited, and she leaves the office feeling great. And I didn't see her again. She didn't come back. 3 months later, she walks back into my office, and I see her in my hallway. And I always remember this. I said, hey, I haven't seen you for a while. How are you? What's going on? She said, well, she said, my neck has been fine since I was here. But she said, you cleared that heart wall for me. And that really works, because she said, about 2 weeks after I was here, I found out my childhood sweetheart's been living right around the corner from me for almost 8 years. And we're in love. We're dating. And I think he's going to ask me to marry him. Right. And so this is the kind of thing that happens when you take down this wall. Now, 93% of people, we think, on average, have put up a wall like this. So the problem is, you see, I believe the subconscious mind is really the seat of the subconscious. Think about this. I mean, if you're really feeling hurt by somebody or by something, where do you feel it? You feel it here, right? You get heartache. You might feel like there's an elephant sitting on your chest, or like you can't breathe. On the other hand, let's say that you're watching someone perform. Maybe someone is singing and it's just almost supernatural. They're really, truly, their heart is just vibrating, and yours is vibrating too, because there's that resonance that gets set up. What happens then? Well, if you look around in the audience, you're going to see a lot of people like this with their hands up over their hearts, right? And tears in their eyes, because the heart really, truly is the core of our being. So I believe that the most important thing that people can do for themselves is find out if they've got a wall around their heart and get rid of it. Because not only does it interfere with your ability to give and receive love, and not only does it interfere with your ability to really manifest that perfect blueprint that lies within your heart, your best creation, your best destiny, your best life is in your heart, I believe. It also interferes with your ability to connect with God, with the higher power. Because we've had many people over many years tell us that when the heart wall is taken down, not only can they sometimes feel joy or feel love for the first time in their lives, but also many people say that they can actually feel the love of God for them. Isn't that interesting? I never in my wildest dreams would have imagined that this kind of thing exists. But, it's reality. Albert Einstein, gosh, probably 100 years ago, said the medicine of the future will be the medicine of frequencies. That's what this is. Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. That's where we are. That's why we call it the emotion code and the body code, the belief code, because it's what you're doing is you're learning the language of the internal computer. And it isn't anything like what we had thought. The subconscious mind is really a binary computer in terms of its interface. In other words, it's kind of like talking to somebody that can only blink. They can't talk to you. They can blink once for yes, blink twice for no. That's how the subconscious mind is. So you can ask anything that you want, and the subconscious will respond as long as that answer can be returned to you in the form of a yes or a no. And there are different ways to get these answers. We teach lots of different kinds of muscle testing. Hold out your arm, you're strong on a yes, you're weak on a no. Different methods of self-testing, right? And you can also use, something like a pendulum. The key to this, and we try to help everybody understand this all over the world. The key to this is actually prayer. That what you do before you do this work is you ask for help. Now, everybody has different beliefs, right? And that's fine because, if you believe that there's a higher power, we're probably talking about the same thing. If you believe that there's something that created everything, well, we're probably talking about the same power, right? The same being or the same energy, whatever you want to call it. And so if you ask for that help, then what it does is it opens that conduit so that help can come to you. And it also puts you in a state where you're okay to receive that help.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to bring in kind of your experiences with the spirit world. That we focus a lot about that. Camille and I, with our own particular gifts, we tend to interact a lot with those loved ones we have inside, or angelic help and stuff. Have you had a lot of experiences through your work interacting with maybe heavenly messengers or people who are coming in to help heal or things like that?
This often comes up in terms of inherited emotions.
Right.
And I was actually in Brigham City, I think it was, one time doing this event, and I had about 300 people in the audience. And I asked for someone that was really in pain. And I said, if you feel like there's nobody else that could possibly be in more pain than you right now, stand up. And so this lady stands up and she hobbles up to the stage. She's got this terrible pain in her hip. And so I found one, it was a 9 on a 0 to 10 scale and had been going on for a while. She'd seen a couple different doctors for it, but nobody could figure it out, right? So anyway, I find an imbalance, fix it, takes it down to a 4 out of 10 on the pain scale. And the next thing that I found was an inherited trapped emotion. She'd gotten this emotion of, I think it was fear from her dad, who'd gotten it from his dad, who'd gotten it from his dad. It goes back 12 generations, right? And so her dad wasn't there, but these other 11 ancestors, and I always do this now. I asked her, using muscle testing, I said, okay, are all of these direct line ancestors here with us? And the answer was yes. And I said, okay, where are they? Are they, because her subconscious mind is connected and knows way more than, than anybody else. And so I said, all right, are they floating out in the air up above the audience? No. Are they sitting out there on people's laps? No. Are they up here on the stage with us? Yes. And that's always where they are because they're always gathered around that loved one, right? Well, I think they're there for 2 reasons. They're there because they love that person and, something significant's happening to them. But they're also there because they also have this emotional baggage. And this is a really weird aspect of quantum physics. One emotional energy can exist in an infinite number of places at one time, right? And so all those ancestors, when I released that from her, right, then I tested, did that release from all these ancestors? And the answer was yes. And it releases from the children, and grandkids and everything else. So I said, okay, why don't you walk around? And so she starts walking around and then she starts dancing, right? Because it's completely gone, right? I ran into her a year later and it was still gone. But the interesting thing about the story, and the reason why I'm telling this story is because Um, I finished my, she goes back and to sit down, and I finish my lecture, and then I go back out to this hall where we have our vendor table, with our staff. And right after I get there, this woman comes up to me and she says, Dr. Nelson, she said, I was in your class, and she said, I want to talk to you for a minute. She said, I'm one of those people that has that ability to see spirits that other people don't see. And she said, it's kind of been a blessing and it's kind of been a curse. And the two of you, I'm sure, can relate to that. Right.
Yep.
And she said, but I wanted you to know that when you were up there talking about those grandfathers, those ancestors, she said, I saw them. She said, I just wanted you to know that they were there. But she said there was something else going on that I'm not really sure that you're aware of. She said, what I saw was surrounding the stage were at least 200 other spirits that were there, and they were her unborn
Wow.
descendants. Um, and they were there rejoicing that they weren't going to have to take on this crippling emotional energy from her that's been going down the line like a freight train all these years, right?
Yeah. God, I really believe he does work in very natural means, kind of like your whole breakthrough with the code of our subconscious and cracking into that. And I think for many, many years, I have a huge background in Eastern philosophy and medicine. And so I think a lot of those traditions and things, it was kind of mysticism at the time, right? We didn't have other explanations for it. And
Right.
today we're beginning to understand that
We are.
they're really based in like actual principles and laws and science, right? We can begin to understand that there are ways that this is happening that are rational ways, kind of beyond our
Absolutely.
understanding. And so
Yeah.
when you talk about our subconscious being aware of those people around us all the time, muscle testing for those ancestors that are present with us. Um, Camille and I both have this gift. We see things, we interact with people on the other side of life all the time. It's kind of
Awesome.
become our practice and our purpose and our business with what we're doing, and it's a different modality of healing that we kind of come at from the similar but different angle.
Yeah.
But I tell people all the time, this is a gift that maybe is stronger with us that we have emphasized and grown, but we're all aware of it on some level. And I do
Oh
believe
yeah.
that our subconscious mind understands and is aware of those people that are around us all the time.
Oh,
So I love that you
absolutely.
asked that, and it tests positive for people all the time
Oh
because
yeah.
it's a testimony to me that of like, of course we know it. If we could lean back out of this very restrictive rational conceptualization of our minds here, we would be aware of all the background work going on constantly around us in a much more present way. Whether or not we can
Yeah.
physically or spiritually see that occur, we could really be in tune to it and feel it. But I also wanted to share an interesting story with you, if I might, real quick,
Yeah.
as kind of another witness of this happening and occurring. Just 2 weekends ago, I was at a conference with a friend of mine, two friends of mine. One of them has this very same gift that I have, and the other one is more of an energy worker, a light worker, as she likes to call herself, and she is certified in your modality in the body code. And so one night after the conference, we were kind of just hanging out, and my one friend has some very significant trauma in her life that she has been through. Some very, very abusive relationships, very traumatic, that have stuck with her in ways that have impacted her life pretty negatively. And so she asked my other friend, the energy working friend, if she could maybe lean into that and see if she could work on those things and release some of that trauma. So we did for like 2 hours. It was the most intense and amazing session for me to watch happen.
Yeah.
But as these things were working, I would see these beings of light, these angels, come around her, particularly and move through different areas of her body. As she
Yeah.
was moving through your menu, your app on your phone, she would be naming out these specific areas. And before she would even get there, I would see an angelic figure behind her working down on her lower back, working on her spine, working up around her head, working up around her crown chakra. And I would state it, and then my friend, the energy worker, would read it off your menu, and then my other friend would say, "That's exactly where I feel the energy right now." And it was amazing. It was amazing
That's
to
awesome.
witness from like three different angles as this work was occurring, kind of in
Wow.
tandem,
That's
being
cool.
released through choice from my friend who had the trauma, then
Yeah.
being released through facilitation from my friend who was working with your method, and then being released on the spiritual side by
Yeah.
by an angel on the other side who was helping work through those energies in her body. It
What
was
a great
fascinating.
story. Yeah. Thank you
Yeah,
for sharing that with me. That's really fun.
yeah. Um, Also, just another quick random tidbit. We I knew we were going to be meeting with you today, of course, as we've been kind of looking forward to this. Um, Last night, I began having a rhythmic which is something that I have struggled with my whole life, and the doctors haven't been able to figure out or prove. Um, and it was getting quite intense, and I was feeling like I might need to make a trip into the ER. It
Mm.
feels a little bit like a heart attack, and I'm like only 36, so it's not, it's a little abnormal. I mean,
Yeah.
it's happened multiple times throughout my life, and doctors can't seem to figure it out. Um, so last night I called that same friend, having watched her done work on my other friend 2 weekends ago. It was like 12:30. It was very late, but I knew she'd be up. So I called her and I was like, "Look, can you work on acute issues?" She's like, "What does that mean?" I'm like things occurring right now in my heart, my physical body. And she's like, "Well, I can try." So she pulls out the app, she connects into my energy, and she starts working through my nervous system and my respiratory system. And I'm very sensitive to those energies, so I can feel it as she's working through my body. And it's very interesting every time to feel those releases when they occur. And almost instantly, within only probably 30 seconds, every time she moves through an area, I feel things shift. I had a massive headache, and as she released it back here in kind of my um, spinal column area, it moved forward, and then the on your app, it moved into a different area, and then it tested, and she worked on it up here, and then it moved into my respiratory system, and she worked on it here. And I swear to you, by the end of that 45 minutes, my heart was still arrhythmic occasionally, but like my headache was gone. The high blood pressure feeling was gone. The compression in my chest was gone. And
Awesome.
I was like, I don't have to go to the ER. Thank you so much.
Nice.
So really interesting. Those things kind of coincided with our meeting with you today, and I felt very motivated to share them with you and with our
Yeah.
audience here. So
Yeah.
it
Thank you for
works, and
sharing.
it's fascinating, kind of the connections that we can make physically with our spirituality and you know with our energetic bodies is one. We're all very holistic,
I love how you talk about how we can fine tune our how once we understand these tools, it's like we are, you said, inheriting what God wants us to have. It's like we're becoming more highly in tune and more highly intelligent as we become aware of our intelligence and how it connects to other people's intelligence through the spirit that canvases everyone, that connects us all. Like we're just becoming more aware of our God given ability to live at a higher level, physically,
right?
emotionally, spiritually.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe it. I think that I- if you look at the world and how out of whack everybody is, and how much emotional baggage there is in the world, and how sick people are, as we start to remove all these imbalances and remove all the emotional baggage and open our hearts again, we rise in vibration. And there are people who think that, and this may be true, that we have to raise the vibrational level of the earth to a certain point, that where then the Savior will return, because we're ready, and we're not ready
Mhm.
now. It's so important to not have our subconscious mind be burdened by all kinds of negative energies wrapped around it. You need to remove those energies. So I think that's the most important thing. In fact, it's interesting because every single patient that I saw that that had been diagnosed with any kind of chronic disease, they always had a heart wall. And
Mhm.
sometimes what I would do is, in my evaluations of people, I always tested all the organs to see how balanced they were, and all the glands and all the meridians and all the chakras. And then sometimes with those patients who were so chronically sick, they'd been told that there was no help for them ever. Sometimes with those people, I would just do one thing. I would just remove the heart wall, nothing else. And then I would retest them after the heart wall was gone. And guess what? I would find that 80% of all those organs and glands and meridians and chakras were now all balanced again, right? So that's how powerful I think this is. And people just don't realize. But if you look at the world and you see how ridiculous things are, that here we are in 2025, and we're still using war as a way to settle differences between nations. And I mean, dropping bombs is okay, and blowing people to pieces, and you know, it's just insanity, right? It's insanity. Um, but if you think about it, we we use this brain, right? If we have a heart wall, then we're kind of primarily using this brain, and this brain
Right?
feels okay to drop bombs and use war and so on. This brain feels nothing. It's the brain and the heart that feels. So when we take down that heart wall, all of a sudden things change for us, and things will change for the whole world when enough heart walls are taken down. I mean,
Wow,
anyway,
that's
yeah.
powerful. That's really quite powerful, actually. Um, in closing, I kind of want to explore this notion here, your thoughts on this as somebody who's been in this field for so long and also straddles that kind of faith practice as someone who is very dedicated to their own religious background. There are a lot of people who do this, especially in Christianity, who feel very pulled, very called for this kind of light working, for this kind of
Mhm.
help to help heal the world in this way. And they feel like it doesn't fit within Christianity. They feel like it excludes them because their religious practice doesn't make sense with these beliefs that they have. What would you say to those people who have that struggle?
Well, I had you were mentioning earlier about experiences with spirits and so on, and I have had a few run-ins with entities from the dark side. I remember actually I was doing a show once in London, and I was feeling great, and all of a sudden it was like something had me by the throat, and I could barely talk, and I paused for a moment and went off screen, and sure enough, there was an entity there that didn't want me talking and had me by the throat. And so, I commanded it to leave in the name of Jesus Christ, and instantly, I was fine and was able to go back and finish the show. But I think that in the very beginning, when I was first getting into this work, I had some experiences with entities, and I did not want to be deceived. And the scripture that was the most important one to me was from the New Testament, where Christ said, "Wherever two or more are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of them." Right. And I thought, okay, if I always pray and I always ask the Father in the name of Christ, then he'll be there. And if he's there, then I'm not going to be deceived, and there aren't going to be any entities in, because he's going to be there. Right. And so that's been that was one of the key reasons for prayer, right? From time to time over the years, people have written to me, of different religions and of our own religion, and how do we square this? How do we deal with this? Well, God has inspired lots of people for a long, long time about a lot of different things. And why wouldn't he inspire people about healing? It's come from up above, and what a wonderful thing, right? God loves
Right.
us.
I particularly love that. I know with my own practice, when I meet with people and I have sessions with people, I always start with prayer. And it's extremely important to me that, God is involved in that process, and particularly that the Holy Spirit is involved in that process, and that it's palpable for both of us, that we both know it's present as that second witness. Because it's in a lot of these works at the height of what these intuitive practices should be, in my opinion, you are a facilitator
Yeah,
for a higher power, right? It's a
exactly.
conduit. It's the whole water spigot, water out kind of scenario
Mhm.
analogy here, where it's like we're just a faucet. We're bringing something else through that's not ours, and we should be able to know that and feel that. So
Yeah,
I love that you bring that up
I
as
totally
a
agree. I've said for many years, the highest duty of the healer is to act as a go-between for the higher power, right?
right.
That's our job. And you have to be careful, because the ego's always there wanting to kind of, do its thing. And what we tell our practitioners is, look, eventually someone's going to come to you, and they're going to have tears in their eyes thanking you for what you've done, and you want to accept that thanks, but then you want to pass it right up to where it really belongs, right? Because the moment you take that onto yourself and you start thinking, oh my gosh, look what I did, I'm so fantastic, I'm so powerful, wow, in that moment, that's the moment you cut yourself off from the source of your power, which is the higher
Right,
power, right? Yeah.
right.
So
I
we're
love
right
that.
we're right there. I'm right there with you.
Um, Side note, Rachel, our editor, she can cut this. I have so many questions about more of the spiritual aspect with entities and things. I had some
Yeah.
really been adjacent to that light working, the angelic help episode with my friend 2 weekends ago. There were some negative interactions that followed after that because we
Uh-huh.
did release some entities from my friend.
Oh yeah.
And I would love to explore that too in another podcast,
We'll
kind
have to
of
do
get
another
your,
show.
yeah, it's going to be a whole nother bag of cats, I think. But
Yeah,
I would love to have you back to talk about that because
sure.
we get a lot of people who have these kinds of gifts and have these kinds of experiences. And I would love to understand your take on
Yeah,
how that interacts with healing and spirituality. If we could
absolutely.
get you
Yeah.
back for that.
Just I'd love to do it. Absolutely. This is fun because I can just kind of unleash.
We love that. But we can go ahead and close up and we'll work with you and schedule that
Okay.
on a different time to really have time to explore that topic
Sure.
thoroughly. Okay. Well, it has been wonderful, Dr. Nelson, to talk with you today and hit on so many fascinating and uplifting concepts. Where can people find you? Where can they find out more about you and your practice and your books and everything?
Well, our main website is at discoverhealing.com. And then I have a personal site at drbradleynelson.com. It's drbradleynelson.com. And of course, we're all over, Twitter and, the social universe, whatever. Yeah. So we're out there.
We'll go ahead and we'll link those things below so that you can easily find Dr. Nelson and explore his practices if you feel drawn to it. I think we need more people in the world working all this good magic. So,
We do indeed. Thank you. Thank you both so much. It's been fun.
yeah, it's
Thank
been
you so
amazing.
much. If you guys want to follow our podcast more, you can find us on throughtheveiledpodcast.com. We have a community on Facebook as well if you want to get a little bit more involved.
We'll see you guys next time. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
Take care. Thanks. See ya.
Thank you.